Hey there, welcome to Legends of All Time. Today, we're going back more than 2,500 years to meet a man, or maybe a legend, who changed how people tell stories forever. His name is Homer, and even if you've never read a single line of his works, you've already felt his influence. Heroes, epic battles, tricky wanderers, angry gods, so much of that comes from him. Picture ancient Greece before books, before printing, before smartphones. Stories lived in voices, not on paper. At night, people gathered around the fire or in crowded halls, and a poet stood up and began to chant. His words painted ships, storms, warriors in shining armor. Listeners didn't just hear the story, they lived inside it. Homer was one of those poets, maybe the greatest of them all. The strange thing is that we don't really know who Homer was. Some say he was one blind poet. Others think Homer was a name for a whole group of storytellers. There are even people who doubt he existed as a single person at all. But in the end, it doesn't change the main thing. Two gigantic poems survived under his name, the Iliad and the Odyssey. They became the backbone of Greek culture and a foundation of Western literature. Let's start with the Iliad. Think of it as an ancient war movie turned up to the maximum. The scene is the Trojan War, a huge conflict between the Greeks and the city of Troy. There are thousands of warriors, countless ships, walls, gates, dust, blood, and the constant watch of the gods above. But the core of the story is not the war itself. It's the anger of one man, Achilles, the greatest Greek warrior. Achilles feels insulted by his own king and refuses to fight. Because of his pride, the Greek army begins to lose ground. Friends die, enemies advance. The whole war balance shifts because one person is furious. Homer doesn't just show swords and shields. He shows how emotions rule the battlefield. Pride kills. Rage blinds. Honor and shame drive people to madness. That's why the Iliad feels so modern. Human feelings haven't changed. The Iliad is full of iconic scenes, duels between heroes, mothers crying over fallen sons, gods stepping into the fight like overpowered players in a game, changing outcomes with a single move. But Homer doesn't paint anyone as simply good or evil. Even the bravest hero can be cruel. Even the enemy can be noble. In one of the most powerful moments, Achilles, full of grief and rage, finally meets King Priam of Troy, who begs for his son's body. Two enemies sit together, united by pain. That's Homer in a nutshell. War outside, humanity inside. Now, the Odyssey is a totally different ride. If the Iliad is about war and rage, the Odyssey is about the long, dangerous way home. The hero is Odysseus, a clever Greek king who helped win the war with his most famous trick, the Trojan horse. After victory, he just wants to sail back to his wife and son. But the journey turns into a nightmare that lasts 10 years. On the way home, Odysseus faces one trial after another. A one-eyed giant who eats his men, a witch who turns warriors into pigs, singing sirens whose voices drive sailors to their deaths, a whirlpool that swallows ships, and a monster with many heads that devours sailors. Each episode is like a separate adventure, but together they form a deep story about will, courage, and temptation. Unlike Achilles, Odysseus wins not only with strength, but with his mind. He tells lies, hides his name, uses tricks, and acts like a master strategist. Sometimes his cleverness saves everyone. Sometimes it brings more trouble. He blinds the Cyclops to escape the cave, but then can't resist shouting his real name, and that pride almost destroys him. Homer again reminds us, intelligence is powerful, but ego can ruin even the smartest plan. What makes Homer's stories so gripping is the mix of big and small. On one side, gods, monsters, heroic battles. On the other, simple human moments. A wife waiting for her husband, refusing to believe he's dead. A son growing up without a father, dreaming of his return. A soldier wanting to go home, but torn between duty and fear. These details make the characters feel alive, not like distant legends. For ancient Greeks, Homer was more than an author. His works were like a school, a cinema, and a holy book in one. Kids learned to read using lines from his poems. Adults quoted him in arguments. Politicians, philosophers, and even athletes grew up with his heroes in their heads. His poems told people what courage, honor, loyalty, and fate look like in action. There's also something important about how these stories survived. At first, they existed only in memory. Poets sang them from town to town, adjusting lines, adding small details, cutting others. Over time, the poems settled into the versions we know today. That means Homer's voice is not just one voice. It's the echo of many performances, many nights, many crowds holding their breath as they listened. Even today, traces of Homer are everywhere. Epic fantasy films, heroic games, stories about war and long journeys. They often borrow his patterns. The brave but flawed hero, the clever trickster, the long road home, the final recognition scene when someone returns in disguise and reveals who they are. When you see those moments, you're seeing Homer's shadow. Why do his stories still work after so many centuries? Because deep down, they are about questions that never age. What makes a hero? Is it strength, honor, intelligence, or something else? How far will you go for glory? What does home mean? Can a person change, or does fate always win? The Iliad and Odyssey throw these questions right into your face through battles, storms, and painful choices. So when you hear the name Homer, don't imagine a dusty old writer sitting in a library. Picture a performer standing in front of a crowd, voice strong, hands raised, taking people into another world with nothing but words. Picture warriors stopping to listen. Picture kids leaning forward, eyes wide, as they meet Achilles and Odysseus for the first time. That's the power of this legendary ancient Greek poet, the man whose stories outlived kings, empires, and even the language in which they were first told. Homer didn't just write about legends, he became one. If you enjoyed this journey into the world of Homer, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to Legends of All Time, and check out our other videos about great figures and epic stories. Your support helps bring more legends to life. See you in the next episode.